Oxford fans weren't happy this week. Rowan says, we all know Harris isn't good enough. We spent money on another striker. We give him one start, and then we put Harris back in. Jake says we need a striker desperately. Welcome back to a Yellows Walk. It's 20 minutes of Oxford United chat, of course, with Sam. And thank you very much for watching. Striker issues, then, Sam, is the topic of this one. We're reviewing Bristol City draw. You couldn't beat 9 men. How frustrating was that?
So I think you have to talk about it in kind of two parts. The first is that for all the possession we had and the sheer number of chances we created, there weren't an awful lot of quality. Now, partly that comes down to the fact that we know firsthand that a Liam Manning side is so horrible to play against when they have a man sent off, or obviously later in the game, 2 men sent off. Especially, with the 2 centre-backs they had, we are very familiar with. McNally and Dickey were chucking themselves at every challenge and being real stubborn. So it was always going to be a tough game. Now, I will say that while I understand the constant criticism of Mark Harris, he's not scoring a metric crap ton of goals that people would want. At the moment, we're not playing to his strength. We were whipping in an awful lot of crosses at the weekend, and he's just not going to win an aerial duel against McNally or Dickey. And whether people like it or not, that's not going to change if Tom Bradshaw is in the lineup. The only option this football club had at the beginning of the window to face a team like that was Will Goodwin. He's not played an awful lot of football at this football club. I think the grand total of 8 games he played for us. So it's had to go out on loan to Wigan to get some more minutes in his legs. It's just a case of, you don't always get the rub of the green. It's just, you can't always anticipate these kind of situations.
Yeah. It's I feel harsh in talking about Harris every week because there's been lots of criticism. But if you look at his statistics for the season and how many starts he's had versus how many goals, if you take away August and the early bit of September, it really isn't good enough, is it?
It's not. What I would say though is if you look at sides that have been in around where we are in the table, you'll struggle to find ones that have had that consistent goal scorer. There are, 1 or 2 exceptions, but for the most part, sides at the bottom end of the league, especially when we've come up from League One, you'll find that step up, strikers struggle with that. Now, obviously, there does need to be a bit of Mark Harris on his part. He needs to improve in front of goal. He's had a couple of opportunities. Obviously, the main one that everyone was kind of all focusing on Mark Harris for on Saturday was a ball fits across the face of the goal, and he tries to go first with his leg, then with his head, then decides to go with his leg again and just misses it. So Harris, he knows he will need to do better in that situation. But at the same time, this isn't exactly like it's a brand new thing, like a newly relegated or a new promoted side, I should say, are struggling to score goals through their dedicated number 9.
Yeah. We're recording this before the Burnley game, by the way. So if you're tuning in watching this game, what are you talking about again? It's old. This is recorded on Monday. Let's have a look at another couple of days. Damien's view was that it was a poor performance, but at least it's another point on the board. Hot favourites for relegation. We really, really are putting it up to a lot of teams, and that's a fair point. Is we do forget you were the lowest budgets of the league. You run through the playoffs, so didn't have that head start that Portsmouth and Derby had in terms of weeks of planning. And you're more than holding your own against teams like Bristol City that have been in the league for ages. So we mustn't create that. But that's 2 performances now that have been a little bit dodgy. Are we starting to get a bit worried?
I mean, that was our worst home performance under Gary Rowett. I think the Preston performance is worse as an overall game, just because we didn't have any much of the ball. We were sloppy in the midfield area. Bristol City was more a case of we were much better on the ball. If you look at it, we were kind of, I think, minimum 3 times as many passes completed as them. 20 shots in total to their 8, but we only had 4 on target. They had 2. So overall, it was a dominant performance, but it was just a lack of quality. Now, at the same time, obviously, like you say, everyone was hot tip. We were hot tip favourites to go immediately straight back down. We've spoken before, Mark. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, they'll go down with record points and all that kind of stuff." So the change of manager has obviously helped this. We're still unbeaten under Gary Rowett for the time being. I've got a feeling that might change against Burnley, but we'll wait and see. I mean, but given their run of form, it might end up being another 0-0. They seem to love those this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is definitely a sense that I think Rowett said on a couple of occasions that we're getting the right results and the sort of results we want to stay in the division, but the performances, there do need to be an increase. The positive thing is we're 10 points clear of the relegation zone at the time of talking. We are, I think it's 13 points away from the magic 50 that it's always coined. That is safety in this division. So obviously we've got sides against, games against 2 newly promoted sides coming up, other games that we should be looking to get points in. And given the way, we took it to Blackburn, given the way we've, gone about games under Gary Rowett, it's entirely possible that some of the games we were fearing under Des, because, Des was not as defensively structured in the way he sets his teams up. I think we could give a Leeds, a Sunderland, we could give them more of a go than we did when we got outclassed by them earlier in the campaign. I'm not saying we'll win, but I think we'll definitely give it a better go.
Okay. We must talk about the refereeing decisions before we leave the Bristol City game aside. First of all, their red card. What was your take on the first one? The second one I think we can accept was worth 2 yellows, but they weren't happy with the first red.
And I can understand why. Standing in the stand in the moment when Williams has gone battering in and taking Will Vaulks out, there was a kind of, that's a really rash challenge. I thought the fact Will got straight back up and was right in the referee's face was interesting. That more told me that this, Will was going to ask for the red, but yellow was going to get awarded. Having watched the replay back, obviously he gets to touch the ball, but he gets it by going through the man. And it's the trailing leg that takes out Will Vaulks. It's a yellow card. I don't think it's a red. It's definitely robust, but at the end of the day, this is a contact sport, and you're going to get those kind of challenges. It's one of those things that the EFL has always kind of still had over some of the top divisions in the rest of Europe. Is the EFL does allow more robust challenges, shall we say? In terms of the 2 bookables, I will say that the second one is. Obviously, it's the second one that gets him sent off, and it's one of those that it's a 50-50. I think in most other scenarios, and the fact that both men have gone into it, trying to do the exact same thing, you could, ref could wave it off. But either way, you're asking the referee to make that decision. And, I don't think there can be too many arguments, like you say, about the second one. But first one is not a red. And I think, we'll get into one that maybe could have meant we were down to 10 men.
The Bristol City fans want us to mention this one.
Yes.
What's your view on that?
It's not great. So again, in motion, when live at the game, you kind of don't take much notice of it, but watching it back, it's very hard. I think Greg is a very, very lucky man to get away with that one, because if you look at the position of his foot, it's right above the kneecap. That's a borderline dangerous challenge to be making. I don't think there's any intent there, but it's at the end of the day, when the challenge is that high, intent doesn't really matter, because you could, either way you could do an opposition player real serious damage.
Yeah, that's a leg breaker, isn't it? Absolutely. Right. Cheers for that. Let's move on. Of course, this week we're looking at the February fixtures, and at the end we're going to appoint our January Player of the Month. So stay tuned for that. Let's have a look at what's left. Then you've already highlighted that you meet up with some old pals after the Burnley game. Yes, so no weekend fixture of course for you this weekend because of course it's FA Cup and you've got rearrangements there. So after Burnley, I mean, it's a free hit, isn't it, that one? But all your eggs in one basket against Derby and Portsmouth. Those are two massive games, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I've seen kind of other opposition fans in around where we are talking about kind of, we need to stop referring to these as free hits because any points that are up for grabs, you need to be getting them, especially when we're looking to get to that magic 50 mark. But yeah, Burnley is going to be a very, very tough fixture, obviously. Over the weekend, they confirmed the signing of Marcus Edwards. That's a scary addition. This a lad that, what was it, last year was being with the likes of Tottenham and Arsenal and other top European sides, and now he's in the Championship. And, it's not like they need more attacking talent. They've got Koleosha, they've got Jay Nancy. It's a bit ridiculous at this point. But obviously, it's going to be a very tough game. I think it's definitely going to be similar, I think, to the pressing game in which we're going to be a lot more defensive. I don't think we're going to see much of the ball. But like I said, it's they're known for their draws, and whether Scott Parker might set his side up to counteract the speed of Siriki Dembele, of Shemi Poheta, of Stan Mills if he's brought on as a substitute. It might end up being another dull encounter like we saw Burnley have with Leeds. Was it last week? Mm-hmm. Obviously, as you say, we face our two newly promoted buddies. Derby are in a really interesting position because a lot of Derby fans are getting really, really sick to death. So I'm sure you've spoken to them, Mark. They're getting sick to death of
every week.
They're furious with his football. And the really interesting is it doesn't look like there's any kind of movement in him maybe losing his job, which the number of or the run they are on, it's not identical, but it is similar to the one that lost Dez's job. So it will be interesting that fixture. Obviously, football can change massively in a week, so we might be in a completely different situations where Leeds have sacked Paul Warner looking for a new manager. Paul Warner might have pulled a rabbit out of a hat. We'll have to wait and see. Portsmouth, that's another obviously very big game. They've made some really, really interesting additions in the transfer market. Deal, I can't pronounce his second name, but the Frenchman on loan from Sunderland is a superbly talented player. And obviously we know Josh Murphy's talents. I think there was a lot of that Portsmouth had to in this window to kind of make up for where they kind of let things go in the summer window. So I think they have made some fairly decent additions. And then, West Brom is going to be a really interesting game of football because Tony Mowbray's sides, they usually set up pretty well, but they did get, stung. Obviously, there was a controversial decision in there. West Brom fans will argue, but they got stung a bit by Plymouth at the weekend. And obviously, that's a couple of weeks off, but it's definitely a case that Mowbray's side could, be on a run and be a really difficult side to break down.
Some really, really tasty ones coming up as we reach the business end of the season. Thanks for that. Sam, really good job going through those. Finally, then this week, January's over, so we need to get a January player of the month. We're trying to give it someone different from Cameron. I think he's won it every single month, but who deserves more flowers for this particular run of games, given how good it's been?
So I think it can only be one of two. Honourable mentions, obviously, Shemi Poheta. He's not had the output that he did at the end of December, but again, the way he looks like a new signing from Shemi we saw under Des. I think Greg, especially in the last couple of games, has stepped up and looked really good. We were making jokes in the stands on Saturdays. It's looking like Gregorio Carlos. He looked really good in the attacking sense, especially. Volks, again, another player that looks, a changed man under Gary Rowett. Again, deserves a mention. Jamie Cumming never letting us down. But I think, it's got to go Kieran Brown. I was torn between Kieran Brown and Mikhail Helich because obviously Helich's come in and look absolutely sensational. What a bit of business that is by our football club. But I'm going to go with Kieran because, you know, in tough moments, you know, he's kind of weathered that storm. He's kept his place. He kept fighting for it. And I think what's really important is, in the absence of Elliot Moore in the defensive two, he seems to have stepped up a bit and been that voice in the back line, because obviously, you know, we've seen what can happen to our defense when Elliot is taken out, not just his ability as a defender, but also as a leader. And Kieran stepped up really well. Obviously, it was in December more than January. But obviously, got those 2 goals and 2 assists, I think it was, in Rowett's first couple of games. But yeah, you know, Kieran's been consistently excellent for us, and you know, we just need to get him tied down to a new contract, because I'm getting quite worried that we're getting, as the closer and closer we get to the summer, you know, there'll be more and more suitors looking at him.
Brilliant. Good shouts all round. Thank you very much, Sam. Yeah, enjoy your weekend off. Once you've been to Turf Moor on a Tuesday night, we'll catch up with you next week to review all of that. Thank you very much for watching. Drop us a subscribe below. That would be absolutely wonderful. To get us closer to 100, we're nearly there. It would be amazing if we can get there. Thanks, Sam. We'll see you next week. Have a good one, everyone.